So today we are going to discuss about log events, logging, and incidents. This would be our first part of the today's session. Then we'll take 5 minute break. Sorry, and then we'll discuss about cyber attacks, IOCs, and attacking methodologies. Okay. So this is our today's agenda, discussing log events, incidents, and logging, and then cyber threat attacks methodology and IOCs, and then quiz. So I'll skip my profile. We talked about it yesterday. Our technology partner is Splunk. The labs that we are going to do at the end of the this course on Thursday and Friday, we'll be using Splunk to practice, uh, to work as an analyst and to do some hands-on. Okay, just a second. There is some question. Let me just check that. Sure. Is it clear now? Is the voice clear now? You can hear it. Okay. You're welcome. Right. So our technology partner is Splunk. So in the last 2 days of this series of webinar, we'll be working on Splunk. We'll be seeing how the analyst, they can perform investigation, they can see the dashboards and all those things. Okay. So the very first thing we need to understand, what is a log, uh, the definition of an event, alert, and an incident. Okay. So log in computers, in systems, in devices, all these equipment, uh, routers, switches, firewalls, whatever you name, the technology devices, all these devices, whenever you perform any action on these devices, for example, you create a new file, you install a new software, you delete a file, you create a user, you log into the system, all these actions, they are written into those devices for auditing purpose. Okay, so you can later on, if you need to do some like troubleshooting, if you need to do some forensic analysis, if there is a breach or compromise or anything else, so in that case you need to know exactly what happened. So these details you will find inside the log. So for each action, for each activity, there will be one log generated on that system. The system could be a computer, it could be a server, it could be firewall, anything else. Okay. So the last purpose of to having a log is to monitor the security as well. So it's very important whenever you have a new device in the organization. So you need to make sure that the very first thing, if it is writing the logs, if it is creating the logs. Secondly, the device itself, it's storing the log for how many days? Because the firewalls, they generate a lot of logs in a single day. So for firewall, it is very difficult to store the logs for like 3 4 days. Maybe in a single day or 2 day, the log file will be overwritten. For that, you need to have a logging technology, another device where you can send the logs. So then we move to from log to an event. So what is the difference between a log and an event? Okay, a log is a single action which is happened on a system, whereas an event is a change in the behavior of a system. It can be like, for example, someone, he logged in and then he changed the privileges of a user. So before, this user was a normal user. After changing the privileges, this user is now admin user. So this is an event. Or if you push a policy on the firewall, if you modify settings of a switch, if you create access control list on a router. So these all are events because it's not a single action, but it's multiple actions. So this will be then called an event. So more than one log will become an event alert. So basically, as we were discussing yesterday, that it's very difficult to monitor all the events or all the logs which are generated in a single day. So you need to come up with a mechanism which can, create some kind of alarm. Okay. So what you do, you create a use case. By creating a use case, you define certain conditions or certain series of events. When these events are triggered, so based on that, there will be an alert or a notification. So this notification can be on the dashboard. This notification can be sent through email. This notification can be sent through SMS. Okay. So these are different mechanism or channels that you can use to inform or to notify the end user who is responsible for that device that there is something happen for which a certain action need to be taken. So then we move from incident alert to incidents. So incident is an event which have a negative impact on the organization. See, the basic triad of security are CIA. So whereas C is confidentiality, I is integrity, and A is availability. So if any one of them is affected, so that would call an incident. For example, if you have a file, certain file, which no one is supposed to open that Word document and change it. Okay. So what we did, we create an alarm and we define the size of that file is like for example, the size or the hash of the file is a certain value. So in alert, you mentioned that if this hash change, so you will have an alert. So basically, when the hash will change, when the integrity of the file will change, when you will write a new data on that file, or when you delete something from that file, so in that case, the integrity will be changed. In terms of availability, if a user within the network he accidentally, for example, put a ping from multiple computers, or maybe just for fun, he started doing ping to one server from multiple computers. So this will impact the availability of the server. Okay. So these kind of events which have negative effect on the application, on the system, or on the organization, these are called incidents. So incidents can be like, for example, if an attacker have access to your company credentials, he breach, he compromise your system, and he got some valuable information. Because I have noticed that usually the web developers, when they are developing applications, custom applications, sometimes they do a hard-coded credential they use. So they don't want to enter the credentials again and again. So they simply just type the username and password within the code. So if the hacker has access to the server and if he can view the source code, so he might be able to find credential which he can post online just to make feel ashamed or just to make create an embarrassment for the company. For the banks, the biggest threat or challenge is the credit card information. Oh, like when I was in bank, I was hearing that certain financial institutions cards were leaked, Visa or Mastercard, they were compromised. Their data was shared on the dark web. So these kind of things which will affect the organization in a negative way, these will be called incidents. Sorry. So why do we need a log? So as I defined previously, that in order to identify security incidents. So if you don't have a log, you don't have any information what happened on that system. For example, a user come to you and he said that I was able to log in yesterday, but today I cannot log in. Okay, so we need to go through the logs to see what happened. Maybe another administrator he changed the password. He reset the password of that user. Okay, and maybe this user himself he changed the password, but he forgot his password. And sometimes the users, they are not telling the truth. They are maybe scared. So uh, anything can happen. So you need a log to know what went wrong or what happened in the system. Okay. Secondly, you need to monitor like policy violations. For example, if you want to see like certain users, they are not allowed to access internet, but somehow they have a good friendship with the system admin, and the system admin, he bypassed the policy and gave them access to the internet. So this is a violation of a policy. So organization, they establish certain policies to control uh, different kind of activities of users. But if you want to monitor that, if somebody is like not following the policies, so again you need to have logs, because logs will tell you what is happening. You can identify some kind of fraudulent activity. Maybe one of your user, he's sharing your information to another organization, or to sending emails to his personal email account, or maybe he's engaged in some kind of fraud activities. So from the logs you can identify this. Also, even this is not the role of like SOC, but sometimes SOC helps the other departments. They come to you and they ask that we need to see any logs for Exchange server, or we need to see logs for IAS web server or Apache server, since they are facing some issue, slowness or anything else. So in that case also, since SOC is managing the logs or logging, so they can provide certain details to those users to fix those issues, because one of the job or the primary role of the SOC is to monitor the security events, but along with that, SOC also need to help the other teams in order to like run the operations smoothly. Also, based on the logs, you can establish a baseline. For any system, you can have some like a default configuration. So if this configuration is modified, it means there is something which is not correct. So this is normally happening like for the, if you have like ATM machines, then ATM machines you need to establish like baselines for the registry and all other things, because if a minor change happens to the ATM, so you need to monitor it immediately, because ATM is basically dispensing the cash to the end users. So it's very critical machine. So on these machines, you can establish a baseline and you can monitor them closely. And sometimes, not sometimes now, most of the regulatory authorities, they are asking to meet the compliance to have logs for the last 1 year, because what happens in some cases, the regulator, they might send you an email like after, or asking you that share with us logs for the last 30 days, or for the last 60 days, for a certain IP, for a certain indicator. They want to know that if there was any traffic, because we will discuss today about APTs. So APTs, they are not very easy to identify or track. So sometimes APTs are there within your organization, but your security controls, they are unable to identify them. They are unable to detect them. So in that case, the regulatory authority, they have like more visibility on the national level, so they might get some threat intel about a certain APT, and then they can ask the companies to share the logs. So this is another reason why we need to have log. So now, here we are discussing the general scenario at the high level, because yesterday we talked about the SOC, the same, how the logs are forwarded. Now we are talking how to enable the logs, because see, as an analyst, I prefer, or I recommend that you should have knowledge about all the domains or all the sections of a SOC. So it will help you to work more smoothly, or more efficiently. But if I give you only knowledge about like monitoring, how to monitor, so this will be not enough, or this will be not complete knowledge, because many times you will receive a call from system admin since you are in the morning shift, and the system admin will ask you that I need to send logs to the SOC. So tell me the IP where where I need to send the logs. Okay. So as an analyst, you should have at least understanding. So you can take the call from the system admin. You can assist him or her that okay, send me an email with the details and I will check with the system admin. So it's not only that like you're just like a robot. You enter into SOC, you monitor and you go home, but SOC is a department like any other department. So where the teams they interact, where the teams they have requirements, where the teams they have issues. So what I'm giving you is the overview about how the environment works, what are the day-to-day operations, and then we gradually move towards the analyst role at the end of this course. Okay. So now, when we need to enable the log, we should know what to log. This is very important because, as I explained you yesterday, that in a single day you can have 10 million, 20 million, 30 million logs, depending on the size of your infrastructure. Okay. If there are like 10,000 devices on your infrastructure, maybe in a single day you can have 50 million logs. Okay. So it's very important that what kind of logs you want to receive into the SIM. Normally the organizations, they have expectation that the SIM will be doing the log management also, but in some cases maybe the SIM, it has limitation. It cannot accommodate all the logs. It will slow down the SIM. It will affect the performance. It will affect the availability of the SIM solution. So in that case, you need to make sure that what kind of log you are receiving. For example, if you are getting a log from a router or a switch or a firewall, so there are certain logging levels inside the firewall. Okay. So you don't need to have logs at the debug level. You don't need to have the logs at critical level. So usually, what kind of logs we get? Informational levels, because informational level log, it gives you all information that you need to monitor any security events. But in case if you need to do like deep investigation, there is a problem in the device itself. At that case, you can change the logging level from informational to debug. I haven't included that logging level of different devices, but I can send it later on to you so you can have an idea about this. So the very first part before enabling logging capability, you need to know what you want to log. Let's say, for example, if you have an Exchange server and then you have an email gateway solution. Okay. So email gateway solution, it can send you two kind of logs. It can send you like the administrative logs. For example, who log into the gateway solution, he created a new user, he assigned privileges to a user. This is one kind of logs. These are related to the administrative actions. Then you can receive another logs which will be for Exchange server. So Exchange server logs will give you detail about like if an email was sent to a certain user, if a certain user receive an email. So based on that, you can see the visibility, what kind of email are getting there into your organization. So this is a very important factor whenever you want to onboard any device, whenever you want to add any log source to the SIM. So you need to ensure that basically what you want to monitor. Then the second thing is where to store the logs. As I said that the SIM solutions, they are built uh, with the what we say target to be faster, because if there are like a million logs in a SIM on a daily basis, so in 30 days you'll have 30 million logs. So if you want to search something in 30 million logs, it should be fast enough, because if you perform a search for the, and for the last 30 days for a certain IP to see if there is any interaction for to this public IP, and your SIM, it will bring the results, let's say after 3 hours. So that is useless, because then you're not monitoring real time, or then you're not getting results very fast. So that is why when you are like adding a log source, you need to make sure that how you're going to store the logs. So as we discussed that there are two kind of logs. One is active logs, or we can also call them online logs. Okay, so these logs are basically events. These are certain actions which happen, so it create them as an event. But then there is a raw log which is archived. So it's not a good practice to store both kind of logs on the same SIM solution or on the same drive, because it will put a lot of burden on the resources. Instead, what you will do, you will have online logs on the server, but you can have archive logs on a network share or on a your NAS or SAN storage. So this will divide the load, and the logs will be stored for a longer period of time. So this is second thing, you need to know where you want to store the logs. Then the methods for logging. So how you are going to store or log these details about what information is coming to the SIM. Uh, if For example, you are going to add them through what we call agents, or if you're going to send the logs directly to the SIM. I will explain about agents and SIM. So what kind of method you are going to use, then tool required for logging. Because some devices, they have built-in applications to forward the logs, but some devices, they don't have built-in application. For them, maybe you need a special tool to fetch the logs. So this you also, you should know any what kind of log source you are dealing with and what you need for that. And then the log format. As I explained that, because you are dealing with different kind of devices in the network, so each device will have a different kind of format. So if you are, for example, getting uh, 5 different types of log formats, then you cannot analyze easily. So once the logs are coming to the same, you need to apply some mechanism on these logs to display them as uh, correlated and information which is easily understandable. Another thing is that you should be able to perform regular tuning and review of logs. So regular tuning means when you are getting logs from one of the log source, maybe at a certain time you will see that the logs are not coming. So you need to fine tune the log source. You need to see what happened. If there is any change applied to the log source, because of this the logs stopped or something else happened. Sometimes, since in a enterprise network level you have multiple VLANs between the log source and the SIM solution. So maybe the firewall administrator or the network administrator, he makes some changes in the ports, and all of a sudden your logs stop coming. So you need to tune them, you need to see what is happening. Second thing is you need to review them, because once the logs are stored, archived on your system, on your storage, you need to test them periodically, because maybe uh, there is a bug in the system or SIM. The logs are getting stored, but they are corrupted. So later on, when you want to retrieve those logs, maybe these logs are not useful. So this is part of SIM admin, but you should also have knowledge about this. This is the most important thing for the security events, this time synchronization. So all your devices within the network, they should have the same clock synchronized. There should be not a huge difference. I think 1 minute or less than a minute difference between two devices is acceptable to some extent. But better is that all the devices, their clocks should be synced at the same level. So they should be getting their uh, time or the clock settings or time settings from a single source, which is called NTP. Okay, so basically it's network time protocol, which is acting as a clock, and it's sending the update to all the devices. The devices, they need to be synchronized at 100%. That is very important, because if there's a difference in the timing in the machines, you cannot identify the incident effectively. It will be useless. Then when you're storing the logs as archive, so you need to protect them also. So the logs should be compressed and they should be encrypted. So uh, in case if a hacker, he is accessible or successful to penetrating your network, still he's not able to read those logs, or maybe he's not able to access those logs. So you need to make sure that these log sources are protected. Then you need to do the correlation, because as I mentioned that, for example, if somebody changes the password, so it's not a single step, it's more than one step. So if you don't have a correlation, so you cannot identify the malicious activity. So correlation of the same events or the chain of events which are related to each other, that is very important. So that your SIM should be doing. And then you should analyze the security based events that you need to store in the event logs, because as I say that archive logs will be raw logs, so everything will be stored there. But for the SIM, you are storing the events only, so less information but useful information should be on the dashboard. So by this you can work more efficiently and actively. So a typical log format, log files contains various information which can provide you a valuable information and actionable information also. For example, if a user try to log in from the network, so in the log source you will see that logon type 8. If somebody is trying to do RDP, I think it's logon type 10. Windows, it has certain different kind of logon types. So this will identify the logon activity of the user. If you are logging onto your computer, you will have different logon type number. If you are accessing a network share, you will have a different logon type number. If you are accessing remotely, you will have a different logon type number. So this information gives you knowledge about a user, how he is accessing any resource or any device. For example, if you see an event that a user he tried to do remote desktop access, and you know that you have a list which mentions that this user is not allowed to do RDP. So this is basically a violation of the policy. Or maybe there's a hacker in the system who's trying to gain access to another system. So this information you will get from log format. So what kind of information can be there in a log? So there can be user identification information, date and time, which is very important again. Type of event, what kind of event was that? Authentication success, authentication failure, account lockout, account deleted, account created, group policy updated, user added to privilege group, it was successful or failure indication. Event origination point, so from where this event started, what is the origin of the source? It was the system itself or somebody else in the network he tried to do something. Description, more detail about the event or activity. Severity, so it's some devices they give you severity also, some devices they don't give. Service name, what was the service which is affected, what kind of protocol was used, and if there is any detail for the user. So this typically you will find in any log. When you see a raw log of any of the systems, so you will find that. What I want you to do when we finish the session, so today if you have time in the night, so go to your machines, Windows, and in the search mention like Windows event viewer or event viewer. So open this application, and there you can see different kind of categories or classification, because Windows it creates logs in a different way. So for applications it create a folder, or you can say a category or classification as an application. So anything related to application will be stored there. Anything related to the system will be stored under a category called system. And any event related to security, that will be stored under security. So what I want you to do is go to your systems after the session and just try to explore Windows event viewer. Here I have given like I try to explain you like what kind of normally network is there that the SIM is dealing with. So if you see that, as I explained yesterday, that for a system admin, his concern is only the systems. For the network administrator, his pain is only uh, the networks, switches or routers. But for us, if you see here, so we have to receive logs from all the devices which are there. So there are Windows Server, there are Windows Legacy devices. There's a question, only custom Windows application and subscription. I'm not an admin on my office laptop. That's why. It's okay if you have limited access. Um, on Thursday, when we are going to do the lab, we will show you in detail the logs there. And if you and I think there are other ways also to provide you some logs, so you can then have some hands-on experience on these. So we can see this later on. So here, if you see, like you have Windows event sources, you have VMware virtualization, You have some devices which are operating on SNMP. You have firewalls. You have SFTP, not FTP but secure FTP. So different kind of log sources, and all these log sources, they are sending different kind of information to the SIM. So the Windows server, they are sending web server logs. There is a network share, so you are getting an SMB information. There are databases, you are getting ODBC information. There are devices which operate on syslog. So all this information is coming to the SIM. So it's very important, as we discussed yesterday, to have the full inventory of the network, what kind of devices there. Then another thing you can do is, like, whenever you encounter any new device, you can go on the internet. Usually the vendor, they provide the common event format, which is called CEF, for the logs. So there you will find full detail about any device. For example, for Cisco ASA, if you go on the internet and you can write for the Cisco ASA CEF, so you'll find a PDF document which will be explaining all kind of messages which is Cisco ASA generating. So similarly for other devices you can find also. So here again I use another diagram just to give you a different flavor to have better understanding. So in this diagram you can say that, like, there are mainframe computer. Okay, there is AS400. Okay, so AS400 or mainframe, they are usually used in bigger organizations like SCC, Mobile, ZAN, banks, where there's a high number of transactions are required. But these devices also, they generate logs. So these logs, they are not like normal logs which you can see from other devices. But with the passage of time, as you are analyzing the logs, as you are analyzing the events, you will have some understanding to how to monitor or how to analyze these logs. Then you can see that there are databases, there are applications, SAP, Unix environment, Windows, Active Directory, Linux, firewalls. It's just another diagram just to give you an idea. Then just I have added one more diagram to just give you more explanation. So here you can also see that in your enterprise network, there are web servers, end user devices, wireless access points, network devices, email filtering, APIs and cloud services, servers, streaming log data. These days, due to COVID, so a lot of companies are using conferencing solutions like MS Teams, Skype, Zoom. Okay, so you need to monitor this also, because sometimes you will see a large amount of data is sent from the network to external party. So you need to know that what is the source which is generating this amount of data. So all these comes under the monitoring part. So this was, I was telling you, like in Windows you will find three kind of log sources which are important. But if you're talking about domain controller, you will have to add the DNS and the DHCP. Okay, and anything custom which the client wants. But at a minimum level, you will have three log sources from Windows. That would be application, security, and system. Whereas when we talk about syslog devices, so in syslog devices, all the devices mentioned below, they generate logs in a syslog format, whether it be Linux, firewalls, email gateway, router switches, IPS, IDS, web application firewall, PAM solution, they all generate a syslog format. So they have a single log source. Whereas Windows, each workstation will have three log sources. Then comes a part which is called flat files. Some devices, they are generating logs, but these logs are text files. Okay, so these text files are there on a shared folder. They, you cannot like automatically fetch them. So you have to create some kind of mechanism, some kind of rule to ingest these text files into the SIM. In our lab, we will do the same thing. We have some log data that will be imported into the SIM for the analysis part. So these are called flat files. Then again, you can have another type of log source, which is databases. It could be Oracle, MS SQL, or MySQL. So they also generate logs within their application, so at the database level. So you can also import these logs into the SIM solution. So security incident, as we discussed previously, so it's something which have a negative impact on the organization. Okay, So uh, anything which will affect your operations, which can stop smooth running of the business, okay, that could be called a security incident. For example, unauthorized access to or use of system software or data. For example, someone come to your organization for a meeting, and he try to access your system, he try to access your application, or he try to access your data without your permission. So that would be a security incident. But if the user is authorized, then it's not a security incident. If you make any changes to the system software or data without approval, that would be also security incident. For example, if you are doing any change in the production system, uh, need to apply a patch on a server, and you don't take approval from the management, and you execute this patch, okay, then the SOC team, they will have some alerts based on which they can ask the concerned teams or departments to validate that whether this change which is applied on the production server, is it approved or not. Sometimes we need to get confirmation as well. It's not necessary that by looking at an event you will know that it's authorized or unauthorized. In some cases you need to validate that incident with the concerned teams. Loss or theft of equipment used to store or work with sensitive university data or an organization data. Denial of service attack. So these all are different kind of security incidents. Another very important thing while working in SOC is to define the severity level. See, whenever you see a security incident, so you have to give it a severity level. Okay, so this is a general mechanism how you identify a severity level. But in organizations, we go one step ahead. We create some classification, and we define those classification as like emergency or critical or high or medium. Based on that, we can then, when we see any incident within the organization or on SIM, then we can define that okay, this incident will be considered as low, or it will be considered as medium. So here, if you see, like generally speaking, so there are two factors. One is likelihood, and then the impact. So if you see the very first column and row, so likelihood is almost certain, okay, but impact is insignificant. So it will be considered as medium. But if you move to the last row, so likelihood is rare and impact is insignificant, so it will be considered low. Whereas if you see the impact as severe and almost certain, so that is called critical. For example, if a user or a hacker he compromised to the production server, so it means the likelihood is almost certain. So he already got access or he is going to get access, and the impact will be severe because if he has access to the domain controller credentials, it means all your company data is compromised. You cannot stop the attacker, or you have to like act very fast to minimize the impact. So based on that, we define the severity level. When we are creating an incident, we tell that this incident has critical or emergency severity, high severity, medium or low severity. Then the log management. So basically, when once you have like large volume of logs, how you are going to manage them. So this is the part of the log management. So you collect log from overall the network from different devices, then you arrange or store them somewhere at a central place, which is your SIM. So it does the log aggregation, it collects the logs, then it sort the logs according to the devices from where they are coming. Then you will decide how you want to store them, what is the compliance requirement for the retention, then log rotation. So in order to like keep your system smooth and running, you have to remove the logs which are online logs after a certain period of time, because your hard disk where you are running the live operations, it has limited storage, so you cannot keep the logs for a certain longer period of time. So then you have to rotate the logs, maybe you have to compress them, you have to archive them, you have to delete them. So that is log rotation. Then log analysis. So once you are getting logs, how to analyze them. how you can see the logs, what kind of information is coming, and then log search and reporting. As I mentioned in the beginning, that if another department they come to you and they want to see like how many authentication failure from a certain user in the last 30 days, so you have to search the log. So all these features are available in these SIMs, which are available now, like LogRhythm or Splunk or QRadar. So you will find all these features there. So that is how you are going to use the tool itself.